Hi there, welcome to the third episode of my 10-minute moan of today. And the topic of this one is a fantastic piece in the Telegraph which talks about Keir Starmer and his head in the sand. And it says a lot of things that I've been saying since we started seeing violence in the streets of the United Kingdom. Now, this piece by Camilla Tominey is just, if I was very good at writing, I would have written a piece not even as close good to this. It just grabs what I've been saying and how I feel what's happening in the United Kingdom, particularly over the last 2 weeks. The headline is Keir Starmer cannot lead with his head in the sand. Britain deserves better. The nation has been shaken by the awful events of the past 2 weeks, but Labour is failing to quell the public's concerns. And I think that sums it up very well. In the article, she writes, all week the country has been crying out for leadership in the riots, yet we've failed to get it from Keir Starmer. Ever the lawyer, the Prime Minister has treated the unrest we have witnessed across these broken isles as a case to be prosecuted rather than a problem to be solved. He's held Cobra meetings, promised a standing army of specialist police officers and fast-track punishment for those responsible for all the wanton violence and destruction. Well, the harsh sentences doled out to those far-right thugs are, of course, welcome, despite fears they may be released early due to overcrowded prisons. Not once has he been able to bring himself to address the societal breakdown in communities where integration has failed. He has shown all the legal competence of a former director of public prosecutions, but like a duty solicitor going through the motions during a 3 a.m. police interview with a disorderly drunk, he's forged no connection with his client in this case. The Great British Public. Asked by GB News on Thursday, is now the time to engage with the underlying tensions that are within communities over the issue of immigration? Starmer simply couldn't find an answer. Responding in his characteristically procedural way, he insisted his sole focus was coordinating with law enforcement and police leaders to keep pushing on the criminal justice response. Diana Johnson, the policing minister, was similarly circumspect when asked why the brothers who attacked police officers at Manchester Airport last month hadn't been arrested. It seems Labour ministers are more comfortable saying prison works for some suspects, not others. It's not good enough when you're leading a country that appears increasingly at odds with itself. You've got to listen to the voices of dissent and address their concerns, not pretend it's solely a far-right problem for courts alone to resolve. The great irony here is that Starmer stood in the steps of Downing Street the day he was elected and vowed to unite our country. He promised, whether you voted Labour or not, in fact, especially if you did not, I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Yet in his first major intervention since taking office, he has not moved everyone together as pledged. We need a bold leader to denounce all the hatred and prejudice in all its ugly forms. Instead, we have seen a selective approach where white protesters are lumped into the racist pile, while those clad in balaclavas and carrying out unprovoked attacks on white people were largely given the benefit of doubt. Labour did suspend Ricky Jones, the councillor who called for far-right rioters' throats to be cut, describing his behaviour as completely unacceptable. But why was someone harbouring these sort of extremist views selected to run as a Labour councillor in the first place? Why has no one addressed the fact that he was surrounded by leftists cheering his divisive and incendiary language? There has rightly been criticism of reforms vetting, but let us not overlook the swivel-eyed nutbags who have slipped through Labour's net. As we learnt during Jeremy Corbyn's reign, even people who claim to be anti-racist can hold views as prejudicial as a Tommy Robinson fanboy. Yes, Starmer should be congratulated for rooting much of the anti-Semitism out of the parliamentary party, but The wider left is still infused with Jew hate, as evidenced by the supposedly anti-fascist poster that was circulating around Finchley and Golders Green this week, which equated Zionists with the far right. The poster from the group Finchley Against Fascism read, "Get fascists, racists, Nazis, Zionists and Islamophobes out of Finchley." A small number of demonstrators were said to have later chanted "Free Palestine" outside a local synagogue. Ever mindful of Labour's ethnic minority vote, Starmer cannot seem to bring himself to call out this incitement. But were he a true leader, he'd have the courage to condemn racists on all sides. As well as calling out the far right, he identified the anti-Semitism which runs through some sections of Muslim society. He'd understand that to do so isn't Islamophobic. Then there's a mass migration initiated by Tony Blair, a courageous leader who would encourage reasoned national debate rather than pretending the current levels are sustainable. The silence and the disproportionate condemnation of those questioning the status quo has helped create this vacuum for mindless reprobates to fill, while law-abiding people with genuine concerns continue to be ignored. Last week we even had to endure the ridiculous spectacle of Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, being interrogated on the issue by her own husband Ed Balls. You would have thought Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, of all front benchers, might want to stand up for those left behind, but she too has been studiously avoiding the subject in the interest of political expediency. Meanwhile, we have seen Sadiq Khan making it all about himself. I feel genuine sympathy for the Labour Mayor of London when he says, like a lot of people in my generation, I felt triggered by the event of the last couple of weeks in particular. It's difficult to explain the ripples when you've been targeted because of your religion or colour, or your skin, and you can't change either of those. But this is exactly how the capital's Jews have been feeling since October the 7th. And the man elected to represent them has done very little about it beyond a few contradictory words about Israel's right to defend itself and a need for a ceasefire now. Indeed, when he issued his most detailed statement in the conflict in the Middle East last October, he declined to mention either the hostages or the terrorist takers Hamas. Starmer isn't just out of ideas when it comes to the riots. Labour seems to have no real answers to many problems plaguing this country, beyond the suggestion that growth will magically solve all our ills. From stagnation to social breakdown, Starmer and his cabinet are great at pointing the finger at 14 years of Tory rule. But solutions are in short supply. Merely saying you're not going to tax working people doesn't equate to taking notice of their legitimate fears. The political class stopped listening to the electorate years ago. Most people are utterly horrified by what has happened, but how many are surprised? They have seen these tensions build up over years of hubris by successive governments. They have witnessed their elected representatives bending over backwards to accommodate the needs of various vocal minorities, while silencing the majority. Starmer can't lead with his head buried in the sand. You believe me now when I said it catches me? So what I've got there is quite a learned journalist who knows a fair bit about politics, seeing exactly what I'm seeing. And that is a brandishing of any person in the United Kingdom with fears, with concerns for their community and their nation. Brandished far right and ignored. They've done nothing bar step up how we actually arrest people and how quickly we can deal with them, while totally ignoring the problems in place. I wrote on X today, 12 days ago, 3 beautiful young girls were murdered in the streets of our country. And Keir Starmer has never once spoken about what he wishes to do about knife crime. All Keir Starmer has told us is how we're going to prosecute people. All Keir Starmer has spoke about is how we can make the far right somehow vilify them. It just beggars belief that a leader of a country who promised so much in the steps of 10 Downing Street is not interested in facing or even accepting the concerns of the people, that he's happy to term far right and many others are happy to term as fascists. Having concerns for the safety of your own children, having concerns about knife crime, having concerns about the amount of immigration and not having the concerns of immigrants themselves, having concerns about the amount of people in our country currently seeking asylum who have came here illegally when we have a perfectly acceptable asylum system in place, but they choose to ignore it. And people be concerned with the numbers in our streets and those over here that we actually don't know who they are. These are concerns that people have. And you just want to ignore them. And that's the frightening bit for me. Because if we keep ignoring the concerns that I believe are shared by the majority of people in the United Kingdom, then how do we fix it? Do we just lock up everybody that you suggest is far right? Do we just try and ban these social media platforms that you feel are not giving the narrative that you want? Because until we actually accept that people have concerns and we consider how to deal with them, I see no end to this anytime soon. And the further and further you push people back, the further and further you push people down, the pressure just gets greater and greater and greater. And any pressure cooker in the world has a seal that will go at some point. And if we keep patting people back, the pressure might get greater and we see more. That's my concerns. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification button. But most importantly of all, unless you're Keir Starmer, Rayner, or any of these people who refuse to listen to the people of the United Kingdom despite promising to do so. To everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.